That'll be her. Okay, so I'm here this evening to share with you some of the stories around Henley Women's Regatta and a little bit of the history of Henley Women's as it started out in the first ever regatta, which was in 1988. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll be able to see my presentation. So John, if you could just let me know when you can see it, and then I know everyone else can. Fantastic. Okay, and if I'm looking up, it's because I'm looking at my screen, which is above my camera, so I do apologise to everybody. So Henley Women's Regatta, it's been happening in Henley since 1988. I competed at the very first regatta, and it was a real privilege to be able to race on the iconic course that we have at Henley. Having watched the men compete at Henley Royal for so many years, it was really fantastic in 1988 when a group of women got together and with several key partners in Henley, including the stewards from Henley Royal Regatta and the Copas family, were able to put on Henley Women's Regatta. There's a lovely picture here, and it's quite pertinent actually because we have our national team racing in an 8 in the final of the championship 8s against Yale University. Nice to see that they're in the lead. And we also have one of our under 23 quads rowing down to the start. So you can see it's a real showcase for British women's rowing, not just at junior or club or university level, but also at international level. And the purpose of the regatta is really to provide women with a really good competitor experience so that they come to Henley and they feel that they can perform at their very, very best. They can enjoy it whether they win or whether they don't make it through from the time trials. And it's to create a friendly and relaxed environment. We like to think that we're slightly less formal than some of the other regattas that are staged at Dorney or staged on the Henley stretch. We like to be friendly, relaxed and accessible for our spectators so that they can really enjoy the quality of women's rowing. Okay, so some facts about the regatta. We are actually the largest international women's regatta in the world. We're expecting 1,850 athletes to come and compete this year on the iconic and famous River Thames in Henley. And I don't know if many of you have walked down the river recently, but they're actually filming a new film called Boys in the Boat, which actually should be taking place in the US, but they've chosen our iconic stretch on which to do the filming on. We offer events at Henley Women's all the way through from junior up to championship, and we attract competitors annually who are really aiming to perform at their very, very best and to win at Henley Women's Regatta. And many people train throughout the year with this as being their pinnacle event that they want to perform at. We run over 3 days, and this year the event is being run from the 17th to the 19th of June. So that's over a weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And we usually happen 2 weeks before Henley Royal Regatta on obviously our beloved iconic stretch of the River Thames. And we do like to preserve that unique British quality and atmosphere. The regatta has grown massively in popularity, and this is a reflection really on the increase in the numbers of women that are taking part in rowing, and that has really impacted on how many women compete, but also how many people want to come to the UK and race British women. Our competitors, as I said before, they come from clubs from all over the country, from schools, and from many, many different universities, not only in the UK, but particularly from the US. And as I said, we're the premier regatta in the rowing calendar, and we do have a good international entry that comes from Europe, particularly the Dutch like to come, and we've had French, German, Norwegians, and Spain and Spanish as well. Huge entry generally from North America, that's schools and universities, and a few clubs traveling over from the US and from Canada. And then we usually get a smattering of entries from Australia and also from South Africa. So I thought I'd just give you a brief history of Henley Women's and then walk you through a bit more of the interesting stories of what's happened, and then also a little bit about what we've done in the last 10 years since I've been chairman. So the regatta started in 1988. It was hosted in June before Henley Royal, and it was just a one-day regatta at that time. There was a huge expansion in women, and in 2004, the regatta restructured and offered a completely different set of events to really encourage and support the huge increase in women's participation in our sport. And much of that happened when I retired. So there was a lot of interest in women's rowing after the Olympic Games in 2000 when we won that first medal. And then in 2009, we introduced some under 16 events, some J16 events, which have also proved to be extremely popular and complemented the other range of junior events, which does start to show the huge growth in schoolgirl rowing, which has happened and is still happening. We're really still climbing the curve of the number of junior girls and schoolgirls that have really started to buy into our sport. And then in 2012 was our 25th anniversary. It was also the same year as the Olympics. And it was the year that I was asked to take over as chairman by Diane Graham. And in 2013, we introduced online streaming. So we were able to stream the regatta live onto our website. And we had over 7,000 people from 20 different countries dial in to view the regatta. And it was the first time that this was done on the Henley Reach and in the UK, and was closely followed by the live streaming that the Henley Royal does now. And in 2019, we also completely re-looked at the structure of Henley Women's, and this was a reflection on the fact that there are more women's events now at Henley Royal, and we really wanted to create a joined up approach to how Henley Women's operates, and then how women can then go on to compete at Henley Royal. And we have dovetailed very, very nicely with the regatta, Henley Royal's events, so that actually there's a really good progression from one to the other, and many crews that compete in our championship then go on to compete at Henley Royal, and several of them, if you win, generally pre-qualify, so they don't have to do the qualifiers as well. In 2019, we had our largest ever entry, and we introduced a different structure. As I said, we introduced the championship for those who were hoping to go on and compete at Henley Royal, and aspirational events for clubs and universities that then want to go on and do better and aspire to championship, to create this pipeline. And in 2021, we finally went ahead and ran the regatta. We cancelled the regatta in 2020, unfortunately, due to COVID. And there was huge pressure from other COVID issues that meant that there was pressure to cancel in 2021. But the committee and I were determined to run the regatta. And also we ran it with spectators. So we were the first rowing event to go ahead last year and actually host spectators. It's very difficult on the Henley stretch to run events and not allow spectators to come. And we were able to do that, working very closely with Public Health England and Woking Borough Council. So let's have a little look at the exponential growth that there's been over the last let's look at this, to 80 years in women's rowing. And my sister is Gwyn Batten, who John mentioned, rowed at the Olympics with me and won that silver medal. She's also the chairman of the Women's Eights Head of the River, which is another huge event that happens in the winter in February, March on the Tideway. And that's also another good reflection of the number of women competitors that we have in this country. And you can see in the 30s through to the beginning of the war, there was an interest in competition for women's rowing. And then in the 50s, there was another interest in women's rowing, and the numbers were still well within the 20s for those that were competing at the Women's Eights Head of a River. But you can see through the 60s, the 70s, and as you move through the 80s and up into the 90s, there is an exponential growth in the number of women competing, so that the number of crews that they had entering the Women's Eights Head in 2008 peaked at 300. There is a limit to the number of crews can enter, because obviously there's a certain time scale on the tideway, but generally that has stayed at that level over the last 15 years. I then went and did the same thing, and I took and had a look at the number of entries that Henley Women's has had since 2000. And you can see that the number of entries we had in 2000, so that year in which Gwyn and I won that medal in Sydney, both with Catherine and Gillian, surpassed the 200 mark, but was below the 300. And then you can see how, as we look through 2005, 2009, all the way up to 2010, there's a growth, and there's a small dip as we come into 2012. And then we had phenomenal success of the women at the 2012 Olympics with Catherine Granger and Helen Glover and their crews, and the lightweight double as well winning, which meant we won 3 gold medals. And that surge then continued all the way through to 2016, where again we have a small dip as we come into 2018, and then we peaked in 2019 with just under 500 entries. Those entries, we cancelled the regatta in 2020, and then the entries again were high. They were our second highest ever in 2021. So despite COVID, there are a lot of people that wanted to come and race at Henley Women's, and we had our second highest entry. So we did open for entries at Henley Women's 2 weeks ago, and we have had a huge interest in, and we are looking at a very large entry for this year. Can't give you any more information at the moment until we close entries and announce what the draw is. But we do have a lot of interest from overseas crews who obviously haven't been able to travel for 2 years, who are also interested to come and compete at Henley Women's. So you can see both events show a huge growth in women's rowing over the last few decades. We then look at the 1988 regatta and the reasons behind why it was set up. So 1988 was the first regatta. There was a founding group of women and several men as well that were interested in giving women an opportunity to race on this stretch of the river. Henley Royal had introduced and done some invitation events with women's events. And in fact, Rosie McLaughlin, who was one of the founding group, had raced at one of those events. But it didn't look like there was going to be a large opening for women to compete at Henley Royal. And the founding group, which included Chris Airstrop, Di Graham, and some of our early committee members, explored the options with the stewards. So although they don't own the river, they own the land and the infrastructure that is used on the river, as well as the Copas family, who own the land at where Henley Women's is staged, which is at Remenham Farm. And then also Pat Sly, who's one of the neighbours, was also one of our original members. She lives in Old Blades and still lives there, looking at how we could possibly stage a regatta at Henley. And the solution they came up with, which was very, very exciting, was to run from the Henley Royal Regatta finish and to finish at the Henley Royal Regatta start, which is actually running the regatta in the opposite way to what it's run today. And it was a huge success. And the first regatta had 109 entries, bearing in mind we're looking at just sub 500 now, over 17 events and 92 races, with 3 overseas crews, even back at that very first regatta. So it was a huge success. It was run over one day, and I competed at that very first regatta for Thames Rowing Club, which was where I was racing at the time. Steve Redgrave and Anne Redgrave became patrons of the regatta, and you can see here is a very young Catherine Granger winning the pairs event back in, I believe, 1994 or 5. Which shows, you know, how it's become a pipeline. Many girls and women that want to go on to compete at a higher level for Great Britain often have some very formative experiences racing side by side at Henley Women's Regatta. And Catherine has gone on to support the regatta. She's patron of Victrix, which is our Henley Women's Winners Club. Looking at our early committees, this is Margaret Adams, who also was one of our first chairmen. And there's some very famous names here. Some of you may recognise Di Ellis, who was chairman of British Rowing for many, many years and sadly passed away several years ago. But she was also one of our founding members. And whilst I was chairman, she always came to the regatta and sent me a letter afterwards congratulating us on the success of the regatta, and usually about 4 or 5 bullet points of what we could improve on in future. You can see, I'm not sure, it might be a bit small for you on some of your screens, but Pat Sly is here, who lives at Old Blades, is one of our neighbours. And Southey is also here. She came to the regatta in 2019. She used to be chairman of the Women's Eights Head of the River. So many formative women here, as well as men. Ian McNuff, his wife, is our entry secretary now. He was our treasurer back in the early days, and Tommy Thompson, who also did a lot of work on behalf of British Rowing with regards to promoting rowing in the UK. And this is one of our first early pictures of our committee. This was once Diane Graham, who was my predecessor, was chairman. She was chairman for over 10 years and really took the regatta through to the success that it was when I took over. And the picture here you can see is actually me racing at Henley Royal Regatta for the British rowing team. We raced in 1995, and you can see the crowds already on the bank and the tentage that is in situ there. And this was in 1995 when we raced in the Women's 8 and then went on 2 years later to compete at the Olympics. Going on to mention another one of our key partners, and I mentioned them earlier, and that's the Copas family. Without the support of the Copas family, we wouldn't be able to run Henley Women's Regatta. They own the land on which we staged the regatta. And back in 1988, they were incredibly supportive of the regatta, enabling us to use the land. And you can see a picture here of the first regatta and the barn bar. This is what the barn bar used to look like. If you walk past the regatta now, you'll see it's now offices, but the barn bar was used where Brenda Copas, this is Brenda Copas down here in the picture, cooked some amazing cakes and teas, and there was a bar there as well, which is where people could get their refreshments. Here is Tom Copas, who was a long supporter of the regatta, unfortunately passed away last year, and then his children, who have gone on to help us with running the regatta and been our partners. So you can see young Tom Copas here, and Tanya Copas, who was incredibly helpful to me last year in making sure that we were able to stage the regatta despite the uncertainty of COVID. So a huge mention for the Copas family, and obviously still our partners and still instrumental in how we're able to stage the regatta today. Some of the history of the regatta. There are two situations where we have had to nearly cancel the regatta. One was in 2007, and there's some pictures here of the mud bath that ensued at the regatta. You can see here people wading through mud trying to boat. And also here's someone with their bike with huge puddles everywhere. And also in 2012, which was Diane's last year as chairman, when we really needed to cancel. The reason being, in 2012, we'd had a huge amount of rain all through May, and the stream on the river was incredibly strong. And the forecast also was for some very strong southwesterly winds. And as I had agreed to be chairman of the regatta, I was horrified to see the numbers of meetings and the amount of decision making that had to happen and contingency planning that happened, that meant that we were actually able to go ahead with the regatta in 2012. The committee looked at several different contingencies so that we could run the regatta. We were able to make some of the races time trials only, so that we didn't go ahead with some of the younger members and less experienced members racing side by side, but doing a time trial so everybody got to race. And then that allowed us to increase the time between races So that also allowed crews to take longer to get attached, so we weren't running behind and we were able to keep the regatta on schedule, but also make it safer should there be any incidences on the course. And we also asked our umpires and the launches that were around to make sure that we supported the crews that might be struggling to get on the start or to align or to get off this course. So we were able to run a really safe regatta despite the fact that we nearly had to cancel. And actually now we have a lot of trackway that we have as a contingency which we can put down, which means that we avoid getting a huge mud bath, and which is the situation that we had in 2007. So that brings me really through to my tenure as being chairman of the regatta in 2013 through to 2021. And I had obviously competed at Henley Women's myself. Another formative experience for me was going to the Olympics and seeing how athlete-centered the Olympics is, and then working at the Olympics in 2012, where I ran the athlete village for those competing at Dorney in the canoe sprint and in the rowing. And we very much felt strongly that whatever we put on needed to be something that was competitor centric at the Olympics. And I brought that through into the conversations that I had with the committee and the passion that I had to make Henley Women's something that was unique, that was special, that was something that competitors in this country really looked forward to going to. And therefore, our philosophy was not only to inspire a generation, which came off the back of London 2012, but to carry it on and to create a compelling and engaging competitor experience, to enhance the spectator experience as well, to make it something that people wanted to come and watch, but also to work closely with our partners, so that being Copas, that being the stewards of Henley Royal Regatta, that being local businesses, as well as individuals that wanted to support the regatta so that they felt really integrated into what the regatta was. As someone that lives in Henley and has had a family in Henley who've gone to school in Henley, and I have many friends in Henley who are not rowers, I was surprised how many people didn't actually know about Henley Women's Regatta. It was something that happened down the towpath sometime in June. And it wasn't really embedded into the town and into the community. And that's been one of my focuses over the last 9 years since I've been chairman, is to try and integrate it a bit more into the community with regards to how we work with the town council, how we work with crew hosters, and how we try to encourage volunteers from the town. And much of the committee now is made up of people who actually live in Henley, as well as being interested in rowing. And the other thing that we wanted to continue to be as a regatta was to be fair and to be friendly, not just to our competitors, but also to the spectators and anybody that wants to come and be involved with the regatta. This is the prize giving from my first ever regatta, and building on Inspire a Generation, I invited Catherine Granger to come and give the prizes, fresh from her gold medal at London 2012. We have here Debbie Flood, who also lives in Henley, and this was her winning the single scull. She then went on to compete for Great Britain. And then I wanted to encourage young women to come to the regatta. And these are my two daughters and my neighbour's two daughters, who we wanted to get young girls to come and see the regatta and be part of it. And they became our flower girls at the prize giving. Moving on to think about what our core purpose was for the regatta. So we had an offsite and we went away as a committee. In fact, we didn't go far, we just went to Leander Club, and we spent a day thinking about what is it that we wanted to stage as the regatta that would really bring it into the modern era, but keep it something that was special, not just for the town, but for the rowers and the spectators that want to come. And our core purpose was to provide a pathway for girls and women from junior to elite so that they can excel in their rowing careers. It may not be about going to the Olympics, but we want them to enjoy it, we want them to come, and we want them to have a really, really great experience. We aspire to be the best regatta for girls and women, and we achieve this by providing a really high quality competitor and competitive experience. And our values sat around safety being paramount, that experience in 2012, and making sure that we wanted to stage the regatta, but we also needed to make sure it was a safe regatta for everyone that came to watch and compete. We wanted to be firm, fair and consistent in our decision making so that athletes felt that they had a fair chance to compete and the decisions were being made in their interest. We wanted to be friendly, welcoming, approachable and inclusive to everybody that came, whether they're from a school, a club, a university, rich or poor, whether they come from abroad, whether they come from the UK, north or south, west or east. We also wanted to be innovative. We wanted to be first movers, to try new things that perhaps other regattas hadn't tried, and to be brave in how we did that. We wanted to be professional, and we also wanted to concentrate on delivering a regatta that had quality. That was something that people really were proud to be part of. We wanted to be competitor centric, and we also wanted to balance tradition, but also with modernity, with what it means to be a woman rower in this day and age. And we wanted to do that by making improvements in the competitor experience. And that meant improvements to how we laid the site out. So on the land, we wanted to create an area that was a competitor zone where competitors could go, relax, and have what they needed to be able to compete. We also wanted to create a spectator zone where spectators had what they needed to watch, and they could mingle between the two, but it also gave spectators an area where they could drink and relax and watch the racing, but also competitors somewhere where they could prepare to go out to race. We also wanted to make sure that people had a good boating experience. So one of the things that I always really hated about regattas was having to stand for ages with my boat on my shoulder, waiting to queue up and put my boat on the water. And to do that, we purchased, with the support of Henley Town Council, some Poraloo rafts. We also negotiated with Upper Thames to get some of these Olympic standard rafts, which you can see in the picture here behind one of our umpires. And then also we worked with Henley Rowing Club, so that we were able to have enough pontoons so that people shouldn't have to stand for more than 5 minutes with a boat on their shoulders waiting to boat. And they have a good experience being able to step off, down, and then put their boat straight in the water without any damage, and be able to have a successful boating experience as well as coming in after they finish racing. We also wanted to make sure that people had somewhere to put their boats. We had some racks, and you can see a nice picture of me here, but actually I put the picture in because I wanted to show you some of the racks. And we now have a huge number of racks. So the majority of people coming to the regatta are able to put their boat on a rack, tie it on safely and leave it overnight, so that they can come down the next day and prepare to race effectively. And there is space around all the racks for people to sit and wait to race, for people to have briefings with their coaches, so that we are creating a really good competitor preparation experience before they go out to race. So more space was paramount, as well as more toilets. You never have enough toilets. And we have brought in increasingly large numbers of toilets over the years, to the point that actually the queues for the women's loos are much shorter than the men's. We also brought in physiotherapy and a massage tent supported by one of our local physiotherapists and athlete services. So that's available there at cost price. And also providing ergos so that people can warm up. So we have a tent, and Concept 2 provide the ergos so that crews can warm up if they don't feel they've got enough time to warm up on the water. The other feedback that we got, and we did start running a survey at the end of each regatta, asking people for what they liked and what they didn't like, and we always had terrible feedback about the food. It was greasy, it was chips, it was burgers, or it was far too high end for people. And we were able to improve the food offering by providing gourmet food buses, which we started 3-4 years ago, which have been incredibly popular, So people have a good choice of food. They can choose healthy, they can choose unhealthy, whatever they want. So we have a good offering of food, and that's based on the feedback that we got from our competitors and our spectators in our post-event survey. We also looked at rebranding and making Henley Women's look more modern and up to date. We wanted a blend of the old and the new, and Pam Hayes has been instrumental in rebranding and pulling the regatta into the modern age. Pam, not a rower herself, her sons both rowed at Henley Rowing Club and later at school, but she's been a great supporter of the regatta during my tenure. And she worked also with a designer called Andy Toohey, who also helped to design the branding, and he also designs our annual poster for the regatta. And some people love the pink, some people don't like the pink, but pink it is, and it stands out. And this is our logo, this is our colour palette, and you can see one of our organisers for the prize givers, also a former rower, Rebecca Sadler, Ingledew, who also helps with the prize giving. Not so sure maybe about the branding, but it is here to stay, and it has been very, very effective and stands out and really showcases what the regatta is about. It's about women and rowing. We also developed merchandise. So Pam developed a huge offering around the shop, and that's jewelry, clothing, and various different accessories, which has been incredibly popular, and we've now outsourced that because it's so much work to do. So huge thanks to Pam, the work she's done on the branding and also on our shop. And then she also pioneered a collector's poster. So every year we create a poster for the regatta. This was, it says official magazine, but this was our poster last year. And we do have many people who collect our poster. So watch this space for this year's poster. And you can see further evidence of our rebranding. This is our official program from 2019. So you can see how the branding fits with the image of Henley Women's. And you can also see in my blazer, the branding and the colour palette that we have for Henley Women's. We also looked at enhancing the spectator experience. And in 2013, we pioneered filming of the regatta. We realised that not everyone could come and watch the regatta, but they could watch it on YouTube or on our website. And Karen Donnelly, who was our press officer and sponsorship officer at the time, said, Miriam, why don't we live stream the regatta? And I was like, what a great idea. And she introduced us to John Stethridge, who lives locally in Marlow, and his team Unique Media, who were really keen to start promoting rowing and being involved with rowing events. And they've been our partners ever since. And they've really worked closely with us to deliver an effective live stream that goes out on YouTube and on our website for the duration of the regatta, and is stored there so people can go back and watch their races afterwards. He gives us a very cost-effective live stream. And in 2014, our unique viewing figures were 14,000. In 2021, they were well over 30,000. And in 2016, we also introduced a drone at the barrier, so nearer the start, where we have 2 drone operators that fly a drone and really do showcase the beautiful iconic stretch of the river, as well as how close the racing is. And you can see here our innovative approach to our drone footage. One of our committee members, Phil Plato, secured, we weren't able to use pontoons or stands to fly the drones from, so we actually hire a launch, which is brought down by some of our volunteers from Phyllis Court, and we use a launch from Caversham and build a stand on it from which our drone operators fly the drone for the 3 days. And because we have one race every 4 minutes, they're kept pretty busy. And this is what the live stream likes, as we have looks like. So we have some races going off the start here, so you can see some of our drone footage, and then you can see some races coming into the finish, because we have 2 races on the track at any one time, so you're able to watch both races at the same time. And obviously we have commentary as well. So that was a great way in which we were able to enhance the spectator experience. And what I would say is that's very costly, and that's something that we have to raise 35 grand every year to be able to stage that, and our sponsors help us with it. Another improvement, we've created a finish experience, the Chairman's Enclosure, which is at Rebranding Club. And again, we like to create a relaxed environment, a place to meet, particularly those that you've rowed with previously, or sponsors, or local crew hosters come to meet and watch their crews race. It's open to friends and open to our sponsors, and is a very cost-effective way of being able to corporate entertain or just have entertainment on the finish line of Henley Women's. Our trophies and our events, here are a sampling of some of our trophies. The events we offer are championship, aspirational, which I talked about before. So we split that to university, and we also split it to club. We have a development event, which has been incredibly popular, and junior events, which have grown massively in the last 10 years. And we also offer 2 para events, and these are some of our beautiful trophies. I'll show you this beautiful blue one here, which was presented by Steve Redgrave, and he supports us with 2 smaller trophies, which are replicas of the large trophy, which is for the championship pairs event. This is the Redgrave vase, and so if you win it, you actually win 2 little replica trophies similar to this beautiful glass event trophy here. I thought I might show you some of the huge increase that we've had over the years and how our entry is spread. I won't go into too much detail because I'm running over massively, but you can see here are the numbers of entries that we get. And we're looking at the last 3 years worth of entries. These are our championship events where it says CH. So we've got the 8s, the 4s, the pairs, the quads. And you can see how we've increased in numbers, particularly the champ single last year. We've also seen an increase in aspirational. In particular, we have seen an increase in junior events. And you can see here, this is the junior girls 8. And you can see from 2019 through to 2021, a huge jump in the number of junior girls 8s, and that I really believe will increase this year, since we've had the introduction of junior girls 8s into the Henley Royal programme, as well as you can see the increase in junior quads over the year. So we watch this with bated breath as to see the impact that the new Henley Royal events has on our entries this year. But we are well poised to be able to create that springboard for those who want to go from championship on to compete at Henley Royal, as well as the junior events. These are some of our trophies that we offer. So we offer 26 events spread across championship, lightweights, academic, aspirational and club, as well as the junior events here. And then moving on, just to look at the prize giving. So this is what the medals look like. They're beautiful medals designed by Andy Toohey as well. And we offer championship medals that are bigger than our other medals, so that it really reflects the prestige of winning a championship event at Henley Women's. I talked about introduction of the Flower Girls, the prize giver. This is Kat Copeland, Olympic gold medalist from 2012, who came back in 2019 to present the prizes. And she talked about how she'd been inspired by us back in 2000 to go on to compete at the highest level and to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So you can see how aspirational and inspirational Henley Women's is. And I'd like to say that picture at the beginning of my 2 daughters being flower girls at the prize giving, this is one of them grown up, winning the J16 quads back in 2019 for Henley Rowing Club. I just wanted to say some thanks. Although I'm the chairman, I've merely coordinated the hard work of many of our volunteers that have had a massive impact on the regatta over the last 10 years, particularly Di Graham, who has been the chairman and my stalwart supporter. But some faces to mention: Phil Plato, who was, you can see him here dressed up as an umpire, but he really did help in the early days of my tenure in dragging the regatta from being more amateur. We became a limited liability company. We restructured the way the regatta was. We registered for VAT as our turnover grew, and he was really instrumental in helping us do that. Liz McVeigh here looks after our friends, and Gurley looked after Victrix and building the membership of our friends who go to watch the regatta at Remenham. We have here Joe Wilby, who's done a huge amount of work on the land infrastructure, and we've expanded the land infrastructure to incorporate spectator zone now, which is closer to the island. So we're double the size, the footprint than we were when I started. And here is Gilly, who also did a huge amount in building the chairman's enclosure back in the early days. And a big mention goes here to Dan, who runs the regatta on time. He coordinates all the racing from this little tent here at the start, and he even gets up early and sweeps the start pontoons ready for the athletes to start racing. But just a few names out of the huge number of people. There are over 100 of us that work throughout the 3 days to make the regatta happen. There's umpires, commentators, state boat boys, general people that help out, and we're always looking for more volunteers from those that live locally in the community, as well as those that are rowers that want to come and help and support. So I say to you, come and get involved. If you want to be a crew hoster, contact crew at hwr.org.uk. We're very short of crew hosters this year. We've got a huge contingent coming from abroad that want to come and stay in Henley. So if you're interested in being a crew hoster, if you want to come and watch, the event is free. It's access all areas. You do need to pay to park, and we do invite you to park in the car park so that our neighbours don't become upset with people parking on Remenham Lane. There are many roles in which you can volunteer, and Kira Howell is our volunteer coordinator. If you're interested, there's a form you can fill out on the website. You can become a friend with access to the chairman's enclosure, and again, information is on the website. It's £100 for 3 days, and bring a friend. And then we have very cost effective offerings of food and lunch and tea. And you have a great venue to be able to watch the finish line, with also access to the live streaming as well. Or if you're interested in becoming a sponsor, Emily Lyons is our sponsorship officer as well, and she lives locally. So here are some of our some of our volunteers selling launch tickets for those that want to go and follow the races and some of the iconic launches that we have following at Henley Women's Regatta. So we'd love to hear from you if you want to get involved. And again, just want to say thanks to all our sponsors. The Colgan Foundation have paid for huge amounts of things that we need over the years, in particular our website, and supported our live streaming. I've talked about Copas, our partners. Walter Scott and Scott Investment Partners have supported us as well over the last few years. Hudson Boat Builders, they have a shark zone at the regatta and are a supporter. We have Blue Peak, who are a local accountancy company who provide us with accountancy services, which has been incredibly difficult over the last few years as we've had to become digital. Wentworth House Partnership, who are also friends of mine that rowed with me at the regatta, and they are passionate about the future of the regatta and have supported us over the last 10 years, as well as Henley Town Council, the stewards, and many, many people who have helped us over the years, many of whom are mentioned here. So before I completely run over, I'd like to say there's the finish. And does anyone have any questions?